Hey guys, so it's been a while. This is my labour and delivery story. I'm sorry it might take me quite a while. This might be really choppy because I've got a little man down here having a kick around at the moment, but he'll probably get restless and need feeding and whatnot. And I've also written down as many notes sort of so I could remember everything as much as possible. So yeah, if I'm looking over there, you know why. And I probably look awful because I literally have no makeup on apart from a little bit on my eyes, and just I've done that quickly this morning. Isla's at nursery, so finally I feel like we're slowly getting back into routine of things and kind of but yeah, I thought I'd get on and do this video first, and as it's kind of like the closest to like the first sort of thing I feel like I need to do. Obviously I've got my labour and delivery video vlog thing, so if you guys haven't seen that, go watch that. That will definitely give you an idea of what I'm talking about a lot throughout this video, so it'd definitely be handy to have watched that first. So let's get started. So on Sunday the 11th of December was when I was 41 weeks. I just turned 41 weeks on that day, and so I was a week overdue. I was very much like, oh my days, like obviously you guys, if some of you have seen my updates, at 40 weeks I was just like, what is going on? I didn't expect to be there, and by 41 weeks I was like, oh my days, he literally has to come out of me. And I literally did everything. We did loads of stuff that day trying to get him out of me, walking, and I had loads of like pineapple, bouncing on my birthing ball like as much as I could and stuff like that. And we even went and bought evening primrose oil, which is kind of sort of what I think might have made things get going a bit. I'm not sure, obviously, like I said, we tried loads of things that day, so it could have been any number of them, all of them. My body was just ready, who knows. That night when I went to bed, I took an evening primrose oil just before I went to bed, and I'd been feeling quite restless. I couldn't get to sleep. I was tossing and turning, and I had been having on and off contractions, Braxton Hicks sort of things for like weeks, and they were a little bit more intense I think that evening, but I feel like my mind was playing tricks on me. Like I was constantly second guessing them, feeling like maybe I was making them out to be more than they were because I wishful thinking sort of thing. But like I was trying to get comfortable and I couldn't, and my belly was twinging and I was sort of drifting off to sleep, and then I'd sort of wake up with them and I was like, what's going on? There was this inkling that something wasn't quite right, and I was actually panicking thinking something was wrong though. Like I was kind of like going, oh no, what's happening? Started crying and stuff, and like she hadn't been very well. So me and Liam got up at roughly about 4 a.m. to go and see her, and when we got in there, Liam picked her up and stuff, and we started talking to her, trying to calm her down, and my waters went, and I was like, what? Like I sort of had a little bit come out, and then I was like, what was that? And then I moved and loads came out at once, and I was like, oh my gosh, my waters have just broken. Obviously got tidied all up and stuff, and we brought Isla into our room because she'd sort of woken up in the kind of thing of it all. We were like, oh my gosh, what's going on? Like, what do we do? And yeah, we sort of came into our room and we sat there for a little while, and I said, oh, we should probably wait until these get going a bit more. And I sat there, and they started feeling like they were getting, like I was having a few more contractions that were quite intense. So I thought, well, a little bit more than they had been at least. So I was like, oh, maybe we should get on, and because I was thinking that this is going to get going now. So I thought, okay, we should go ahead and ring Grandad, who was going to be looking after Isla. So we rang him. He came over, and just as he came over, I rang the hospital. And in that time, it had sort of they hadn't got more consistent. I was still having contractions, they just weren't very close together. Explained what happened to them, and they said we'll just to labour at home as much as possible, and hopefully things would get going. So I was like, okay, fair enough. It was a bit disheartened, but I kind of knew that was kind of coming. And I knew that also I didn't want to get there too early because I know they'd turn me away if I wasn't, dilated. So I was alright to get things going, but I expected still things to continue and us to be going in soon. They didn't, obviously. Like we were all awake early. Isla was awake early, and I feel so guilty now for like getting everyone up in pretty much early hours of the morning, thinking that everything was going to get going, but no. I had contractions on and off all day, and sometimes they'd be quite consistent and feel like they were getting going, and then all of a sudden they'd taper off, and I was doing my hardest. I literally was on my birthing ball, because I did feel like when I was on my birthing ball they would come a bit more regularly, but as soon as I got off, as soon as I relaxed, they just go, and I couldn't stay on there constantly because it would get uncomfortable. And it was hard work trying to get things going, as well as, like I said, Isla hadn't been very well, so she was quite grizzly that day, and obviously being tired, so it was a bit of a what's going on. That was Monday the 12th then. We spent, you know, most of the day like waiting around trying to get them going. Yeah, so the hospital rang at about 10 a.m. and they said that if things didn't get going by about 4 p.m. to give them a ring, sort of explain, and they basically said that they'd, you know, thing for us to go in to be checked and to see how they were. Throughout the day my waters kept on breaking as well, kept on having gushes every so often, which was fun because they're constantly like changing. Obviously I had maternity pads and I was using them, but some of the time it was so much that it would just overflow. There was only so much I could do, and I'd never experienced that obviously before, like properly, because with Isla my waters didn't break until I was literally pushing her out and they had to pop them, so this was completely all new for me. Said laboured all day trying to get things going, nothing was happening. So at 4 p.m. we rang them and they obviously said for us to go in. We had a little bit of a hard time getting away again because Isla was just so grizzly and she just wasn't herself at all, which made it so much harder to because we again thought maybe we were going and they would either induce me there or they would keep us in. I didn't expect them to send us home exactly. So we got all packed up, went to the hospital. They put me on a monitor to check baby's movements and the contractions and his heartbeat. And he was perfectly fine, his heart rate was fine. You could see in some of the video and stuff whilst we were there. I don't think the sound's not very great quality throughout the whole of the thing, but I tried my best to make things you can hear some of it at least. Yeah, I was having contractions and the monitor was picking them up, but honestly I wasn't really feeling a lot of them. The midwife was quite shocked that I was having contractions and I couldn't really feel them. Like I could feel some of them, and some of them felt more intense, but they really weren't that bad compared to, you know, later on. But yeah, and they were like really far apart and definitely not regular or whatever. She didn't check me internally because they seem to really put off doing so until they have to, because especially once your waters have broken because due to infection, and they do want to encourage you to go as naturally as possible, and obviously that was kind of my thing that I did want to as well. Put me in for the next morning for an induction at 11 a.m. So we came home and obviously it was kind of on the basis unless something started happening. But honestly by that point I was so tired, I was like, you know what, I don't mind going home, getting rest, like a proper night's sleep, and then starting again tomorrow properly trying to get this going, because I was like, I know I'm going to be shattered, so I'd rather just try my hardest to relax. So we came home, relieved Granddad for the night, and he came back in the morning. Nothing happened again. I carried on having random contractions, nothing consistent, nothing progressing. Granddad came in the morning to look after Isla. We went to the hospital. On the way there, I had some like really bad pains, and it was like I was having contractions. The pains brought on contractions, but it was more like really sharp pains in my tummy and that, and it was shooting down my leg. And they weren't like, they were bringing on contractions, like I said, but that wasn't a contraction itself. Like the pain itself almost felt like, I suppose, an overly trapped nerve, and it felt like he was pushing on my leg, like trying to come out of my leg. And then, yeah, when I got to the hospital, it started to ease up. I think maybe moving around helped it a bit, like getting from the car to the, you know, the ward. But yeah, obviously I told them about it and stuff, and they said they thought it was the same. It was probably like a trapped nerve / like, you know, he's pushing on my ligaments and everything like that. Anyway, now knowing him, he likes to be stretched out, which makes a lot of sense as to why I was feeling him up in my ribs and pushing down a lot, because he doesn't like to be curled up, he likes to be straight. He likes to plank a lot. So I'm guessing that's what he was doing a lot in my belly. Obviously they put me onto their maternity ward, but yeah, they hooked me up to monitors again to check the contractions. I was having them like every 10 minutes ish, and they sort of left us for quite a while. Like typically over here hospitals take a long time to sort anything out, and I ended up having lunch and stuff, and we were just waiting around until finally they came and like checked me, and I think it was about 1 p.m. in the afternoon they finally came and checked me. It's partly because they also got on and ordered the pessary that they were gonna thing about possibly putting me to induce, and using that first as a thing of induction. But obviously they did want to check me first to see how far along I was, and whether it is needed, basically. Once they'd got the pessary, then they came and checked me. That's how come it took partly so long, because they have to get a doctor to sign it off and everything like that. So she checked me internally and realised that the back waters had gone and the fore waters were bulging on his head, and she could feel them. Yeah, she said I was 3 centimetres dilated, and obviously the contractions were sort of there and she could see that. So she kind of felt like the pessary might not be needed and that we should be able to break the fore waters, and hopefully that would get us going, because she said that did feel like that was probably what was stopping it, because obviously they were bulging on his head. So she went and got a second opinion to make sure that was definitely okay and that was fine for the plan, and she came back, said that that's what they were going to do and that they'd give me until 6 p.m, and if things didn't get going then they'd use the pessary and kind of go from there. So yeah, she came back, broke my fore waters. So yeah, from the moment she broke my waters, it all started going and I started getting contractions more regularly. They advised me to go for a walk around to, you know, encourage them even more, and literally I didn't even leave the ward, and I felt like they instantly, like with each step they felt like they got more intense, and I was obviously walking around the hospital and it's a weird like scenario, because I've never been in that position before, like to have to stop and have a contraction whilst other people are walking past you. It's just, I don't know, like it's just bizarre. And yeah, it didn't take long for it to feel like my legs started to feel like all jelly and like they were going to give way, and it was really different contractions to what I remember with Isla. They were I'd say a bit more intense, but they were a bit more drawn out, I suppose, and they were definitely shooting down my legs a lot more than I remember with Isla. I felt like my body worked harder this time to get him out entirely compared to with Isla. It just felt like it just did it. It still hurt, don't get me wrong, with Isla, but this time it just was so much more. I felt like I put more effort into the whole thing, basically. Anyway, so went for a walk, contractions started getting going, definitely getting more intense, and we didn't even really make it very far before I had to start going back, so the pains and the contractions were just so intense in my legs. It was making me all wobbly and jelly-like. When I got back, I just couldn't get comfortable on the ward and stuff and in the bed that they provide you with. They ended up coming and seeing me a little bit and saying, oh, do you want painkillers? So they gave me paracetamol and I think like codeine or something like that. They gave me something else that really didn't do anything to the pains. Like, I knew it kind of wouldn't, but I just took them, so you know, they were sort of placated more than anything. They ran me a bath on the ward, and so we went in there for like probably about an hour and a half ish, something like that. I was in there until 6 basically, and it was definitely nicer in the water. It was still very painful, very intense, but it was nicer in the water. It just feels like it gives you a little bit of a lift, so it doesn't feel as heavy, I suppose. That's kind of how I felt. But yeah, I didn't really want to get out when it came to 6 o'clock, but obviously I wanted to at the same time because I wanted them to check me. So we got out, went round back to my cubicle thing, and they came and checked me, and I was 6 centimetres, and she was saying that she thinks I was progressing pretty quickly. So I don't think she was expecting me to be 6 centimetres though, because they sort of were like, oh, we'll just see how you are, and if it isn't, we'll give you the pessary and sort of thing like that. And I was like, no, I kind of feel like I knew at that point that it should have regressed, and that, you know, kind of how things were with last time. I feel quite like I'm not coping very well with contractions, but on the outside to everyone else it seems like I'm coping really well. I think it's just because I go into my own little zone, and you can kind of see that in the video. But yeah, she checked me 6 centimetres, and she was like, oh, okay, so I'll ring labour and delivery and let them know and see where we can go from there. And she went and rang them, came back and said that they would there was no other births on the ward, there was no one else in labour, so I was the only one. It was a bit, you know, special. And they'd started running the pool for me, and she walked me over there. It took a little while for us to get everything together and then go over there, because I was still having contractions and it was hard to walk and I felt weak and stuff. See, by this point, like, I kind of go into a zone of like, oh my gosh, I know that, you know, it's just going to get more intense, and I'm dreading. Like, you can kind of see it in my face, I think, even in the video. I'm dreading the pushing, because I know it's coming, and I know it's soon, and I know it's going to be incredibly painful, because however much the contractions are pretty intense and pretty awful, I know it's the pushing that's just horrible. It was still nice to have the water birth, and it was nice to get in it, I still sort of felt like kind of aware of, I don't know, like last time with Isla, when I got to where I was this time, I kind of, you know, was so gone in my own head. I think it's because I was really tired with Isla. Had been awake for like nearly 24 hours. So I was just kind of like in my own world, really not paying attention to everyone else. Whereas this time I was so much more aware. And it was just felt really bizarre to be sitting in a pool with this woman just watching me like, so, getting, have a baby soon. And I don't know, it just felt really strange. But yeah, I wasn't really in the pool for very long. I mean, don't get me wrong, it sort of felt long on and off before I started pushing. I had 2 midwives and a trainee midwife, and this was her first proper birth. Like, she'd been to a birth but she hadn't actually seen it. She had to wait outside because the woman didn't want her. I didn't care, I don't really mind. I mean, that's what they're there for. They're gonna have to learn and they're gonna see it at some point. So she was very excited, and it was bizarre again to have like other people that I don't really know, obviously, like there, but just kind of go with the flow of it. It was, what I think was difficult for me was that, like, at the times in between my contractions I was talking fine, and that when my contractions came, obviously it started getting really intense, and it was hard to not just be like, I want to scream. But I was like trying to control it to start with, and then when it came to the pushing, when I started to proper bear down and my body was pushing him out, I just lost control, honestly. Like, I know in my head it was probably like a lot worse. I think I screamed a little bit this time. Like last time I did scream, this time I think I did a little bit, but it wasn't, it was more scary because the water by that point was quite high, and it was a bit too high for me to touch the bottom, it being on all fours, and obviously pushing, I was like starting to float. And with each push and stuff, they had to literally hold me, like all of them, Liam, all of them were holding me, as well as getting ready to to catch baby and check on baby and check that he was coming out fine and everything. They were literally having to support me because I was floating in the water. And so I also like trying to keep my head above water because I just sort of, you know, had no control. It was just like, it was going. I did feel like I had to push more, like effort wise, I had to do it a lot more than I felt like I did with Isla. And it did feel like he got stuck at one point, and they were kept on saying to me like, with the next contraction, like, you know, keep pushing and stuff, and I'm like, I don't have a contraction. And I started to panic that he was getting stuck, and I was like, oh help me, like I feel like he's stuck, and they're like, no, it's fine, it's all right, you'll do it. And it felt like forever, even though it probably wasn't. It was probably like less than a minute. He came out with his arm above his face, so he's bigger, he was bigger anyway. His head is bigger than mine, and he had his hand up by his face, so it definitely stung. And I think that was the worst part, is that he got stuck there where it was stinging for what felt like forever for me, and it was just stinging and stinging and stinging. And it's like with Isla, it stung, but she pushed through quite quickly, whereas him was like stuck there, and I'm like, oh my gosh, like what's happening? Like, and I literally started to panic that he wasn't going to come out and stuff. But they were really nice, they reassured me, and I felt bad afterwards that I was all apologetic and stuff for being like, just have it. Obviously I did it, and he was like, I don't know exactly what time I started pushing, but I know I got in the pool about 7:30, and it was only like 15-20 minutes later that I started pushing. So I was pushing for probably about a half hour-ish, if that, but it didn't feel that long. Like, bits of it did and didn't. It just is such a blur. Like, obviously I'm not aware of time. I only have my videos and that when he was born, and sort of when they sort of checked things and stuff to go by, really. But he was eventually born at 8:19 p.m. and yeah, they, you know, came out and they put him straight on me, and I was like completely like, oh my gosh, thank you, he's finally out. Completely relieved, but also like in shock that I, like in my head I suddenly was like, oh, I gave birth in a water birth, like I actually gave birth in the pool. And I suddenly, you know, was looking at him, and he sounded so, you can hear us sort of a bit in the video talking about it, but he was so gunked up and he was breathing there that I was panicking, and they were just standing around watching us, and obviously they were giving us tummy time and, you know, that bonding time and stuff. But I was just like, don't you want to check him? Don't you want to like make sure he's okay? Like, I'm panicking here thinking like, can he breathe? Is he alright? And they're like, no, it's fine, it's fine. But yeah, that was very interesting. But yeah, again, because I was so, I think this time because I had sleep and stuff and I was a bit more with it than last time, just everything was very raw. Everything felt like, you know, I felt everything. And obviously eventually Liam cut the cord and wrapped baby up, and he had some cuddle time whilst they helped me get out of the pool, and they all had to help me get out of the pool and move to the bed because everything goes everywhere. And it's, however much it's nice to be in the pool because, you know, it's water, but it's still gory and horrible afterwards anyway. So they moved me onto the bed. We waited a little while, obviously, for the placenta to come out. The placenta came out by itself, perfectly fine. Was a bit painful still, and it stung a lot because I didn't tear or anything down there, but I grazed quite a bit, and it was definitely very, very sore. But yeah, then they kind of just left us to it, to be honest. They all left and just had some time with him, and me and Liam looking at him all days. The fact that we've just actually just had him and he's there, and I'm looking at him like, oh my gosh, this is my baby. They weighed him. He was 8 pounds exactly. So definitely a bigger baby, and definitely a big baby for me. But then he was overdue, so not too shocked. Yeah, they did all the checks on him whilst he was there. They checked me out, obviously. And then I had a shower. We had tea and toast. I put him on me, and straight away his latch was terrible. We've had feeding issues, which I'll probably get into more in updates, which I will be doing of him. Yeah, eventually they moved us around to the maternity ward about 11 p.m, and that's obviously where we stayed overnight, and Liam stayed with me. He slept really well the first night, typically, because, you know, he'd just been born and whatnot. But I didn't. I felt like I just couldn't switch off. Every little tiny noise he made, I was awake. I tried to sleep as much as possible, but I was still completely shattered. By the morning, Liam went and relieved my sister because she'd taken over from Grandad, to looking after Isla, and he came back home, got Isla, brought her back to the ward. During the night they also did hit the checks on him, and everything was pretty good. Yeah, I think his checks all passed out for that. Yeah, Isla came in about, I think they came and saw us about 10 something in the morning, something like that. Obviously Isla was still a little bit tired and stuff. She'd had a good night's sleep, but she was still wary of everything that was going on. But she was really sweet with it, and was really excited and stuff when Liam went to pick her up, and that she was going to come and see baby brother and whatnot. And she has been amazing throughout this, honestly. She's been lovely and really helpful, bless her. And we basically stayed there for most of the day. The rest of the ward cleared out, and we were there by ourselves by the afternoon, which you can also see in the video. So we just sort of made the most of it, let Isla chill out on the chair. They were really lovely. But yeah, pretty much that's about it. We got discharged about 5 or 6 p.m. After they did his hearing test and got my paperwork back and signed me off. It's again been quite a few other palavers since we left the hospital. It's a different hospital's midwifery department and health visitor department that take care of us, have been taking care of us since, which made it really confusing with who I was supposed to call for problems and things, and it's just been a bit of fun and games. Hey, are you suddenly really hungry again? He was a hungry baby. Like I said, we were eventually discharged about 5, 6. We came home with Isla. My mum and her other half came and saw us in the hospital. Otherwise, we had most visits afterwards when we came home. But yeah, that's pretty much my labour and delivery story. I'm sorry, little man. I'm just trying to finish this video. But yeah, it was definitely a drawn out labour. But in the end, I got my water birth, so it wasn't... There was complications, but it wasn't terrible. But yeah, so like I said, if there's anything you guys want to know, just feel free to ask me, and I'll try and answer them as best as I can when I can, because this person doesn't give me a lot of chance, do you? Alrighty. Thanks for watching. Bye.